friction points where we confront the gaps credit union leaders can no longer afford to ignore. My name is Buell Collins. I'll be your host today. Today's friction is one every institution is feeling. We're drowning in data and starving for intelligence. Reports tell you what happened. Dashboards show you what is happening, but neither tells you what to do next. That's the missing layer. The actionable decision ready layer is the friction point. And that's exactly what we're tackling today. We are joined by two leaders who are driving this shift, Michai Morin, CEO of Coeus Institute, and George Estrada, CTIO of Rize Credit Union. Stick around afterwards for the Q&A session to talk to these two excellent leaders and let us know what you're thinking. And guiding the conversation is our moderator, Susan Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Stengman and Associates.
All right, good morning, good morning. I'm really excited to bring this discussion to our audience, and we are video recording so that we can use this and continue to send it out to folks. So I'm going to start with the whole idea of what's out there. When we think about the data warehouses and the goals that we've all had about collecting data and being able to give a timely update to our boards and to the executive team, and also have a dynamic tool that would allow us to engage, design, customize, that's been a gap. And as Bill indicated, we see it as a friction point because our competitors have so much data and it's driving their decisions, and they're using AI to do that. So I'm excited to have this conversation because I'm welcoming another of our credit union partners, and Michai is going to talk to you a little bit, and then George will talk to you from a client perspective. And so I will go to Michai. Michai, if you would start with kind of an overview of your journey and what brought you to credit unions, and take it from there.
Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you, team. And George, good to see you again, buddy. I'm happy to be here. I had a bit of an eclectic journey getting to this point in time, especially working with the credit union industry. Prior to founding Coeus Institute, I was an analyst, a data analyst, and I also built automated systems for industries and organizations, state departments, universities like Johns Hopkins. And so I had a very good insight as to how data was being analyzed and then utilized by leadership, by decision makers. And so generally, I would be hired, onboarded to review data and reports and provide an analysis, whether it was trends or whatever. And more often than not, I would be presented with pages, dozens and dozens of pages of reporting. And, you know, I consider myself reasonably intelligent, but a lot of the time it was just inactionable. It wasn't anything of value whatsoever. And I remember very vividly sitting in one of the meetings thinking about how much time and money was wasted on all industries just doing this process manually, how much was being left behind, where was the real value. And so that's what I was doing prior to Coeus. And then as soon as the generative transformer technology had been released to the commercial space, I knew immediately that there was something there that could be done with data and analytics. So I was one of the very first people to kind of pair those two together. And so we stood up Coeus Institute with our original mission to serve the intelligence and defense sectors for the United States. And we learned very quickly that this wasn't just a problem with national defense and intelligence. This is a problem faced by everybody. Everybody's great at collecting data, but it's very difficult and expensive to manually assess and analyze that data to discern any sort of action. So, for example, I won't go too much into the weeds, but let's say you're presented with a report and it gives you metrics on this many males in this age group and this geolocation. That's great. what as a decision leader are you supposed to do with that? And so what we tried to do and what we've succeeded in doing is building systems for industries that make sense of that data and provide insights and generated recommendations based on that data. And so when we were looking for industries that we could bring a positive impact to, like who would benefit most from this technology, we came across a bit serendipitously my colleague who's here right now, George. And George had mentioned in a meeting, why don't we look at credit unions? And I'm a credit union member, but I had never considered that as a potential industry where it may be beneficial. So we did our investigation, we did a lot of research, and we discovered that George was right. That our technology could, in fact, really help the industry move forward.
Well, I appreciate that. Over the years, I've seen tons of data and I've seen attendance at meetings where we all talk about the data and we're excited. And then I go to visit as a consultant and I find that it's sitting on the shelf, right? It isn't as actionable. And so we're really glad you found the cutting in space and found Mitchell Stankovic. And so let's go over to George now as both the background with us and one of our favorite people in the whole world. And you looked at this and you said, okay, with your background, this makes a lot of sense. And then looking at the tool. So tell us about what that meant to you when you got to Rize, a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, thank you, Sue and Michai. Great to be pairing up with you. So, look, there's a couple of keywords and phrases that Michai use. Action is one of them, right? I've been in senior leadership for about 20 years, and one of I think the statistic is somewhere around 70% of digital transformations fail. Okay, 70%. Okay, that's huge, and that's consistent. And one of the reasons they fail, right? It's all a lot of it in the, now it's AI around AI, but before that, it was all around data transformation. Okay, and the single biggest problem was that you create this incredible data warehouse, data lake. You got a reporting team. There's a whole process. I say I want X, and the team goes out there and for 3 months prepares a report, comes back. And most of the time, the problem was it's like, okay, I want to know what my churn rate is. Okay, now here's your churn rate. So what? Action, right? Who's supposed to do something with it? Like, I know my churn rate is X, so who now takes it from there? And it creates this model has created a sense of inertia. So we got the data, we got the reports, but we have no action. We don't know what to do. And speed is everything. Speed to market, speed to reaction to circumstances out there. So one of the things that has been lacking across all industries, so this is not particular to credit unions, but one thing that's been lacking is having a relative speed to market that aligns with the kind of reporting and data extraction that you get, right? There might be events today that I need to know information next week. And I need to not only know information, but know what am I going to do with it? If I got to go to leadership, if I got to go to the board and report and make an ask for some kind of shift in policy or an investment, I have to have something substantive to show. I can't wait 18 months to get the reporting done. Right. So that is where I think OmniCU comes in and delivers incredible value because it is very dynamic. It is something that challenges conventional thinking. And when I'm sitting there or any user sitting in front of it, you're not only just getting the reporting that comes in, but you could be more inquisitive on it. You could run different scenarios that you want to think about as like, okay, given this, what if I do that, right? So action is everything. Speed is everything. And so we got to break the inertia and we got to be able to think quickly. And the truth of the matter is there is nothing wrong with moving fast if you know the direction that you're going in. The
Yeah.
problem comes when you don't know which direction you're going.
Yeah, so let's stay with that for a second. Like in Rize's case, you're located in Southern California and Southern Nevada, and you've got the fires have happened. There have been some pretty, unfortunate, catastrophic scenarios come up. And so being able to have this data available, Michai and I have been working with some different organizations where the fact that there might be a strike come up with city employees, there might be external things affecting the members who are either part of that or certainly first responders to that. So I want to go into kind of the business case a little bit. And both of you said data reporting. And Michai, I'd like to, say, how do, those static snapshots end up becoming like actionable, as George indicated? Describe that for us a little bit.
Yeah, so I think before I explain how it's automated, we need to discern, what's the difference between how we've been doing it for the last century is we look at static data, we're presented with it, whether it's a report or whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, and then your objective as a decision maker or analyst, like I used to do, is to try to make sense of it. And then once you've made sense of it, you need to understand every moving part in your organization to actualize it. And so the difference is with OmniCU is that we've automated the process in which I used to do analysis or decision makers make those decisions. We've worked very closely with George and Rize and you, Susan, to understand the needs of the credit union industry and how it operates and what matters to them. So what we've done is we've automated the process in which the data is now structured in a manner that artificial intelligence can assess. So the entire system isn't just one monolithic AI. It's AI is just little small parts within this process automation. And so the system will read, say you're looking at churn rate, like George said. We have a specific tile in the system to look at your credit union's churn. And what does that mean? It doesn't just give you like a static metric, it breaks it down for you. It tells you, why that churn is there, where the churn is, and then provides recommendations based on the nuances of your industry. And then those recommendations, say George or Jennifer or another executive can take those reports and start to actualize them. No more, mandatory wait period of forever. It's now automated in a way that you can, within a minute, you can have a report that is actionable and then move on. And so this process that once took a team of analysts or a team to pull the data, correlate the data, all of these things are done now within the system. And the only job is for the decision maker or user to just figure out what they want to review and get recommendations on. And it refreshes daily based on, your credit union's update of their data.
So that's really, both of you have referred to kind of these different databases and sources of information out there. And being able to collect that data, put it in some type of data lake and be able to evaluate it is no small ask, right? We have, as an industry, when I'm working with different credit unions, we have a tendency to have 5 different databases that we're going to get the answer. So we may go to a marketing database, we may go to a collections database, we may go to these different lending, systems. And then we depend kind of on our core to write some of that. And so, George, you being both from a technology standpoint, AWS, working with the data, tell us how you got from, there, joining Rize, being part of Jennifer's team, to be able to get to the point where you have the dynamic reports, and what are you seeing as early value? on that.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So look, the first thing we did, and we're very fortunate. We have a very talented team of data engineers at Rize. But the first thing we did was build a data lake, right? And this is one of those things where, um, look, I might rub some of my peers the wrong way, but it's something that should have been done already, right? And the big thing with data is you have to break the silos. Everybody talks about the silos, but nobody wants to break them, right? Now, Jennifer has a very clear and focused vision. We have a great board that backs up that vision. So breaking up the silos wasn't hard. Part of it was just, getting accustomed, but you also have to deliver. So data lake is imperative, right? And I know there's going to be a lot of folks out there that are going to say, well, you can't do it. Well, it takes so long. I did it with my team in 6 weeks working with AWS. So,
Yeah. And I'll say to him, it's not always just the talent and putting it together and people recognizing there's a need. You also have all of the partners and negotiating those gateways and APIs and things like that that you have to work through. So I want to say to the whole group out there, we know this is a challenge, right? And people are at different stages of the town of this transition. We know there's organizations that are creating the data lakes for people. We know that there's different layers, right, that are happening. For you to be able to, stand it up in the time frame you were, A, you had the background, B, you had a CEO that, was helping drive that and the resources. And then you had a close alignment with somebody that really understood data. It wasn't just, if you will, let's just create this data set. You're really working with Michai, he's a scientist and he's able to package that. So, we've got a few minutes, 5, 6 minutes left here. Would you tell me, Michai, from your standpoint, how does that background, I'm always fascinated with that background in defense and how that then came into the credit union space, because your actionable items are actually reports that say, I can produce a PDF and take it directly to my group and as a user at different executive levels. So how did that come about for you to be able to create those tools?
Well, the short answer would be George, but the long answer is our technology is literally it pairs so well with the needs of the credit union space. So originally, those reports were situational reports intended for brass and leadership and officials. And our systems and architecture was designed to be enclosed, no external leakages. So it would always stay within the customer's environment. Customer meaning whoever we were contracted with, or for credit union's sake, whatever credit union. So the system stays within their environment. We don't take your data. We have no interest in it. We're not, one of our biggest missions is to not be a predatory company. We don't want all of that information. And so it was a great pairing. And when George kind of brought that up, we did our research. Like I said, we didn't really know much about the industry other than it was a financial institution. And we immediately saw the value for the credit union industry in an offering like this. And so we've been working really hard to pair and merge our technology with the needs of the industry.
So you've got the standard reports, and I'm glad I taught George everything, about the credit union space. Ha ha. But us working together for a couple of years and looking at things strategically, really did, if you will, create a knowledge base that you committed to strategically, George, and bringing that to Michai. We're working now to have the bundle of that strategy continue to hone in and listen to our partners and listen to our credit union. So I think that when it comes to how you made this happen, understanding Jennifer's desires and being as progressive as she was and understanding the mission that she had, I think was a real key aspect to strategically aligning this with the board. Will you describe that for us?
Yeah, I mean, there is so the underground is a self-selective group of people, right? Like they're looking for something, and that was one of the things I learned when I started working with you in the underground and the folks there. So, Jennifer's vision was very clear. What needed to happen was execution, right? And the key is that sometimes what works best in any kind of leadership team is folks understanding their skills, their capacity to execute in one direction, and then having some humility in the areas that they're not familiar, right? I have to work with the CFO, I have to work with the chief loan officer, and I have to be humble enough to know I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So how do we come to the table, right? Because again, while Jennifer is driving that vision and the board is supporting her, the rest of us have to execute. So if I go in there thinking I can do it all myself, I'm going to fail. If I can't bring other folks to the table and address their concerns, i.e., hey, the data will not be leaving our environment, I fail, right? So what starts happening is that the I starts becoming a little I, and it becomes more of a we. So no, I think that part of it was really aligning with her vision, aligning with the speed at which she wanted to move at, right? There's a little bit of that has to go with that because some folks can be a little bit uncomfortable with that. I personally I am uncomfortable with too slow, right? So you got to pair it right. But also then there's the other looking at the partner ecosystem, understanding that we have to have some respectful but tough conversation with some of our existing partners, and then also provide guidance to Michai and his team on some of the areas that we need to look at and how we need to focus, right? So I think that's been a lot of what's helped. The underground has been immensely helpful, not only with the partners, but also, those 30-minute sessions are like these are invaluable. The amount of information that you could get from folks that have been in the industry for decades versus folks that are up and coming and rising, there's a lot of information there that can be attained. So I think that I've been very successful in this respect as a result of that partnership.
Well, thank you. And I was teasing when it comes to us working together and identifying, even within our credit union shared services initiative, right? Being able to seek out partners that are going to make a difference in the industry. And yeah, I'm going to ask you for your, final statement that you want to share out to the CEOs. And I want mine to be that execution is, from an industry standpoint, a definite need. We need to push forward, and it can't just come from our partners. It has to come from our leadership and the fact that legacy thinking has to move on as well. So 1 minute, Michai, tell us what the action step is. What would you like people to know out there?
Oh boy, let me take my CEO hat off for a second and kind of step back into my role as a trend analyst. And I think what I would advise your audience is that you may not need Coeus Institute, but you will at some point be faced with the necessity to start automating. Now, this isn't, this isn't a fad. This isn't a trend that will fade away. This is very much akin to early stage internet. It's a direct translation, actually. You know, at some point, things will need to be automated. You will need an organized data set to do analysis and automate reporting and have members understand their accounts, and all of this will need to be done. Does that need to be done immediately? That's up to you and your institution, but just keep in your mind that this is where the future is going. And for those who, and I tell this with all industries, for those who don't think that this is important, you're going to run into some very big difficulties in the next 5 years if you've done no preparation. And that's kind of my analyst perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I think and one of the keys that you said there was that automation has to happen, and then AI can give you the interpretation and support it. So I love the fact that you're laying out the whole picture. All right, George, what would you like your colleagues to do out there?
All right, so I'm going to paraphrase Henry Ford. Henry Ford had a saying that he would let people know. Uh, Whether you think of yourself being able to do something or you think of yourself not being able to do something, you're right. And what that means is that the position you take, if you tell yourself you can't do something, you're right. You can't do it. You've already convinced yourself. Why do I say that? Because I say to my peers and I say to all the CEOs that are out there, think big, imagine, stop retelling yourself what you've already been told. Okay. And go out there and explore and push the limit. The industry isn't going to grow if you can't imagine and you can't push. Are you going to make mistakes? Yes, you will. But I'm going to tell you right now that a big part of what afflicts our industry is the lack of imagination. And to my peers that are CIOs, CTOs, stop being the roadblock, be the enabler, execute. Our job is to deliver, is not to say we can't. So that's my big message to everyone.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to turn it. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. And I'm going to turn it back to Buell and he can do the wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, George. Thank you, Michai. That was a great discussion. Thank you all who joined us. Some of my takeaways there, Michai was talking, and what I took from it is that credit unions are so rich in data, and now they have access to very high-end tools that's available to them to help them serve their members. They can take that data and serve their members. George, when you talked about breaking inertia and taking action, knowing your direction and taking action, huge there, huge there. And with that Henry Ford quote, the way I say that to people is never be the first person to tell yourself no. You're going to get defeated if you do that. So I love that discussion. You guys were awesome. You guys hang around. We're going to do some Q&A with these wonderful people here, and catch us on our next episode, Top Level Talent Through Fractional Leadership, May 28th at 10 a.m. If you want to learn more about Coeus Institute, there's a QR code here on the screen. You can scan that and go set up a time to talk to Michai directly and learn more about Coeus Institute and how it can serve your members. All right, so first question, Zach, do you want to hit him with the first question? I know I have one. All right, so George, what I would like to know from you is when you started working in credit unions and you saw all the data available there and knowing how you are with execution, what was the first action step that you prioritized to start utilizing that data for members?
Are you talking about when I first started working with credit unions about 5 years ago, or when I joined credit unions? Because there's a
when
big
you got to working inside the credit union, where you are now.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, look, the first thing that I got to was I needed to build a platform, right? A foundation. I mean, I knew what was out there already from working with Sue and others in the underground for years. But nothing shows you the truth till you get in there. And suddenly seeing, as Sue pointed out, all the different partners and all the different relationships and where this chunk of data is over here, while I got this other chunk of data over there, understanding firsthand really how some of these partnerships work. And look, I'll be honest, there some situations weren't as bad as I thought as there were. It was more that nobody was communicating. Right? Nobody was asking the right questions. So part of it was like, I was ready for battle with some partners, and I found out that there was no battle. There were no to
Yeah.
work with. And then some of the ones I didn't think were going to be a problem became a real problem right away, right? So I think a lot of it was just getting down to okay, how do I set up the organization for success, i.e., what MIT calls future ready. And future ready is like, if I have an opportunity to work with Coeus, I have to be ready, right? And so getting that ready and how fast can that was the first action course that I took.
Awesome. A question I have for you, Michai, is this platform, is it built for someone who doesn't typically work with data, or maybe they're a little bit intimidated by that? Is this
Yeah,
an
no,
easy to
that's
use thing?
Well,
Is this user friendly?
yeah, and I just want to interject, and Linda is asking a question that maybe you can tie into this as well, Michai, is credit engagement templated from a pricing standpoint, or is each engagement unique? So maybe you can
yeah.
build upon that with Gil's question.
Hi, Linda. It's good to hear from you again. We got to catch up. Susan, actually, I think you'd be best to answer this strategy we've been talking about.
Yeah, so I'll jump in and Bill, I want to emphasize your point as well. From a overall, Linda, from an overall perspective, we're looking to and to have stages of this, phases of the development. Some of it will be geared to the smallest of the small credit unions. We really believe that data should not be a hierarchy for access. It should be a tool that everybody can get access to. And so the phases will be there. The phase that we're talking about with OmniCU is an important integration of the real-time internal data, being able to respond immediately from all of your different sources. So we know there's sources out there that we can overlay, and you'll be learning more about that shortly. But there's both the standardized approach that can be used with public data and some of these tools. And then in addition to that, there'll be the intense kind of comprehensive model that Rize has already implemented and is rolling out to other credit unions.
Yeah,
How'd that,
thank
how is
That
that?
was great, Susan. And then also, we're developing other offerings as well, and we intend to have sliding scales, so to speak, based on the customer, and that's, there's a number of variables we'll assess to do that. But we don't think it fair for a very small credit union to have to pay the same amount as a very large one with 10x, 100x the data. That to us didn't seem logical or fair. What we don't want to do is cut out, you know, credit unions that could leverage this and then further the technological divide, so to speak.
Which is another highlight of why we think you're a special partner, right? I think your commitment to our mission as credit unions is both personal as well as with the organization, and we value that. Bill, any others before we want to wrap up?
Yeah, I got one other thing for you, and I want to get both of your perspectives on this, Makai and George. To me, when I started seeing Coeus and what it's capable of with the OmniCU, to me it was like a superpower now available to credit unions, where you kind of can see into the future, right? And that's something that hasn't been available before. So, from your perspective, if you could give each one of you could give me an example of how you would utilize this in your institution that could better serve the members, I would love to hear something along those lines.
Yeah, that's the basis of most of our technology and architecture is trying to garner predictive windows, predictive insights, and you do that by having a structured data lake. It's really a non-starter, unfortunately, but to understand where data is trending and what may happen, you have to be able to correlate certain things. And so with a system like OmniCU, it allows for predictive insights and recommendations based on what's likely to happen based on historical trends. And I don't want to get too much into data analytics, but basically anything where you have enough data points over a period of time, you can start to map out predictions. So it really doesn't matter what type of data, whether it's churn or risk uh, and George could probably answer a little more specific to the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I ditto on everything Mackay said, but what really excites me is that phase two of this, and this is what's open, this is what OmniCU makes possible. Phase two is then, looking at outside data sources, both public and private, that we could get access to then overlay over our data. And you want to talk, you want to talk about some real power, right? Imagine if so we serve, our mission is we serve the underserved communities, right? Now imagine if I could take data from the federal government and find out how many of those folks in my community are veterans and how many of those folks are, like what is the health breakdown in those communities and what programs can we offer to help them, right? This is not about, like what can I do to sell you a newer car? No, this is more about like there's some folks that were within the underserved community, there's subset communities that are being overlooked because everybody gets grouped into one big pie. Well, there's enough data out there from the federal government, from local and state that I could marry. And then there's stuff that we could buy that then gives me high fidelity and I could target. And you know what? The big institutions might not find it valuable, but for us, if we could help 50 members in our community because we were able to fine tune and target them to help them provide programs, then we've accomplished our mission.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
just want to add one other thing to that, Bill. Today it hit the news that we're looking at the I-10s, and we're looking at how that data is going to roll out and serve the underserved, and the bankers have picked up on it. And so we've got a little attack happening with our bankers as well. And so this is a dynamic way of us anticipating what potentially can happen and making sure that all members are not only protected, but that their financial health improves. And we read a lot of data about the declining financial health of our consumers in this country, and that's where credit unions shine. That's our purpose, right? And to be able to anticipate how that impact's going to happen and reach it, give that information out to a group is a powerful, powerful opportunity. So I think we can pretty much wrap up at this point. Anything else, Bill?
No, I just love the ability to look out there and see what's coming for our members and have that social impact that we're all committed to. I love what you touched on there, George. For all of you watching and joining, you can head to cus.mitchellstankovic.com and sign up for our credit union shared services platform. Join more discussions like these in our social network hub. Find out all the partners and solutions we have out there for you, and even access our learning center where you can improve your skills as a credit union professional. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate you guys joining, and we will see you guys on the 28th.